This is 2015's Kept Woman. Warning, spoilers ahead. We open up on a theater as its guests start leaving to go home, and we spot Jessica as she leaves with her husband Evan. The two of them start breaking down the play they just watched, but in reality, it was her play that Evan ends up praising. When they get to their apartment, the two of them flirt with each other as Evan tries to get the keys to unlock the door. But when he opens the door, they find that they've been robbed. As they go over everything that's been ransacked, the thief pops out with a gun pointed at them, and he takes what they have left on their person. After he's gone, Evan tries to remind her that it's just stuff, and they call the police. Of all the things that were taken, all Jessica seems to be concerned about is her engagement ring. Her grandmother's jewelry was taken, Evan's wallet, and who knows what else. None of that seems to matter in comparison to the engagement ring. How fancy was it? That night, Evan wakes up to hear banging in the other room, and he jumps out of bed to see if the burglar came back. When he gets to the kitchen, he finds that it's just Jessica packing up their dishes, and she tells them that they absolutely have to move. The couple move from the big city and wind up in a nicer town with plenty of space. Evan is worried about affording a new house, but Jessica assures him that she'll pick up some more clients to help out. Inside, the two of them sit down to eat lunch, and they decide to go introduce themselves to their neighbors soon. Jessica takes in the silence of the neighborhood, and she couldn't be happier with their decision. Just as they start getting frisky with each other, one of their neighbors decides to introduce himself early. Simon is their next-door neighbor, and he brings a bottle of wine to welcome the couple to the neighborhood. He tells them that he's a professor at the university, and he teaches men's studies. This makes Jessica laugh, but after realizing that he's serious, she apologizes for being rude. Jessica tries to play it off, but Simon isn't messing around. He immediately takes offense, and the entire neighborhood could probably smell the stink from their houses. Simon excuses himself to go grade papers, and they say goodbye. The next day, Evan grabs a quick bite before heading to work, and Jessica thanks him for being so good with the whole move. After Evan leaves, Jessica gets to work on some of her design clients, and Oscar calls her to check in. After hearing about how well things are going, Oscar gives her some juice on the case that's going on, and Jessica couldn't be happier. After talking about the case for a whole day, Jessica hops off the call, and she rushes to the door to greet Evan. After Evan finds out that she wasted a whole workday talking about missing persons cases with Oscar, Evan reminds her that she's supposed to be helping make money to cover the house payments, but she assures him that it was just the first day. The next day, Jessica tries to sit and work on her project, but she rushes outside when she sees Simon starting to pull away. She thanks Simon for the wine bottle, and she tries to make sure that Simon wasn't offended by her making fun of men's studies. After he assures her that everything's fine, she invites him to dinner later that week. When it comes time for the dinner get-together, Simon and Evan talk about his grilling skills, and Simon seems to be disturbed by the fact that Jessica doesn't do the cooking in the house. Simon mentions that he comes from a very traditional household, and he tries to find out more about Jessica. That night, Simon spies on Jessica changing in her room, and this continues as Evan gets frisky with her. Who has their bedroom curtains wide open like that at night? In fact, who has them open at all when they face the street or neighbors? My bedroom doesn't see the light of day. It's like a dungeon. You know what I don't deal with though? Simon. The next day, Jessica goes outside to work on some gardening, but she gets distracted again when Simon comes home. She asks for some gardening tools, but that ends up being worthless. When she sees that Simon bought a trunk full of groceries, she starts playing detective when Evan gets home. She tells him that something's wrong about Simon, but Evan tells her that she just can't feel safe anywhere. Just then, Simon shows up and brings a shovel for Jessica to use for her gardening, and Evan makes it clear that he doesn't appreciate Jessica always finding a problem. In the morning, Jessica wakes up to find that Evan had slept on the couch and he's already left for work. She calls Oscar to vent about Simon, but Oscar seems to side with Evan on things. I'm on his side too. What about the mortgage? Has Jessica actually worked a day since they moved into the house? Just then, Simon calls Jessica to tell her that he's got something exciting at his house for her to see, and she heads over without hesitation. I'm sorry, if you think that something's wrong with a certain individual, how about we don't go over to their house alone when he says he has a surprise? When Jessica goes in Simon's house, he shows her a dress he bought for her, but when she refuses, he shows her security footage of her peeking in his house earlier. When she tries to run, Simon puts her to sleep with a rag with chloroform. When she comes to, she finds that she's been taken back in time to the 50s. Suddenly, a woman named Robin makes her way into the room, and she explains that she's at her new home. Jessica tries to break out, but she realizes that this new home is actually in Simon's basement. Meanwhile, Simon sneaks into Jessica's house, packs some of her clothes and belongings, and tries to stage the area like she left Evan. When Evan gets home, Simon makes his way back to his basement, where he tells Jessica to clean up her mess. Jessica tries to run and scream, but that obviously doesn't work for her. If she had just sat at her desk and worked on her project, none of this would have happened. Jessica goes back to face Simon, and he tells her that she pretty much doesn't have any other options than to obey. Back at Evan's house, he leaves Jessica a voicemail to apologize for their fight the previous day, but when he finishes, he hears the notification ring come from her phone in her office. Back in the basement, Robin tells Jessica that Simon had chosen her as well, and he had been her professor. Robin tells her that she's been down there for a few years, and she assures her that things go very wrong when you try to escape. Suddenly, Simon shows up with some gifts for Jessica, and Robin seems a little hurt that he didn't bring her anything. When Jessica calls Simon crazy for thinking a gift changes things, he explains to her that this is a space for a woman to not have to worry about things women shouldn't worry about. I could literally hear the hate comments in my own head while watching this part. In fact, any part with Simon is enough to fuel the fires of a lot of people. Just then, Evan comes over to see if Simon had heard anything about Jessica, and Simon tries to put his mind at ease the best way he can. Evan doesn't seem completely satisfied with Simon's answer, but he doesn't have anything else to go off of just yet. When Evan goes back to the house, he notices that some of Jessica's belongings are gone, and he calls Tyler to see what he thinks. Jessica sees a portion of what Simon did to Robin the time she tried to escape, but Robin reminds her that it was her fault for trying to escape. Later, they hold each other in bed and reassure each other that there's nothing to fear. The next day, Tyler and Evan pay Oscar a visit, and he tells them that Jessica had talked to him about being suspicious of Simon. After hearing that, they head to Simon's place next for Tyler to ask a few questions. Simon plays along with them, and he even makes up a lie about having a grad student over. After hearing that, Tyler and Evan go on their way to figure out something else. Down in the basement, Jessica bothers Robin by trying to get through to her that this isn't her real home, but they're interrupted by Simon. Simon makes Jessica give him her email and password, and he goes to write an email to Evan as if he's Jessica. Simon writes that Jessica is seeing someone else, and she left him for this supporter. Evan's devastated, and I can't really blame him. To lose your fiancé at a time like this in a manner like this, that would absolutely crush someone. Back in Simon's basement, he has Jessica put on a fashion show for him and Robin, but when Jessica mentions that she wants to go home, he points out the email that he sent to Evan. When Jessica calls him insane, Simon shows her just how insane he actually is. He crunches her wrist, and he reminds her that she needs to fall in line, or even worse things would happen. The next evening, Simon comes home to find Jessica has prepared dinner while wearing his gift dress. He shows her some more gifts that he brought home for her, but Robin isn't too happy about being brushed to the side. Surprise! Jessica wallops Simon in the head twice with a frying pan. The sound of a frying pan on a head is one of the most sensational sounds in the world. Jessica ties Simon to the chair, and after he wakes up, she warns him that she'll torture him if he doesn't give her the code to the door. Robin is so brainwashed that she ends up attacking Jessica, and Jessica almost wins until Simon breaks loose and chokes her against the wall. Jessica spends the rest of the evening in bed, and when Robin goes to join her, she brings up a girl named Megan. Megan was the girl before Robin, and she never found a way to love Simon, so Simon made Robin kill her as punishment. Hunger Games! The next day, Evan gets home from work, and Simon comes over to talk to him. He asks if there's any updates on Jessica, but Evan doesn't have anything new to share. Simon insists that Evan should come over that night to drink and watch the game, and Evan agrees. That night, the guys sit on the couch to watch the game, and Evan tries to open up about how he's feeling. Meanwhile, Robin and Jessica are watching their evening on TV, and Robin reminds her that the best thing she can do is to forget about Evan. When Simon comes down later, he tells Jessica that he'll kill Evan if she tries to escape again. She promises to be a good girl, and Simon calls her over to prove it. The two of them go to the bedroom, and Simon undresses her slowly. While this is happening in the basement, Evan is purging the house of everything that reminds him of Jessica, and Robin is reminiscing of the attention Simon used to give her. A couple months later, Evan decides to put the house up for sale, and Simon comes over to see when he'll be leaving. Down in the basement, it seems that the attention Jessica has been getting is causing a rift between her and Robin. Just then, Simon pops up, and they all sit down for dinner. Afterwards, Simon lays with Robin, but he can tell that something is wrong. Robin says that Jessica is her problem, and she makes up the lie that Jessica told her about a fake escape attempt. After hearing this, Simon thanks Robin, and he gets up to handle the problem. He brings both girls to the living room, and he tells her about what Robin said. Simon tells her that lying is the one thing that he can't abide, and he slits Robin's throat for lying. Simon tells Jessica that he did this to protect her, and he goes to dispose of Robin's body while Jessica cries in her room. Elsewhere, Oscar calls Tyler about Jessica, and he tells him about findings on Simon. Apparently, each school that Simon worked at had one missing student, and Simon was fired for having inappropriate relations with said student. Tyler thanks Oscar for the information, and he heads out to Simon's that night. Simon is sitting on the couch with Jessica, but soon the doorbell rings. Simon heads up to answer the door, and Jessica watches the camera footage from the basement. Tyler comes in to ask Simon more questions, and he has a look around the house as well. Tyler tries to question Simon about Robin, and he eventually ends up at the wine cellar. Tyler's doing all of this without a warrant, by the way. Well, while we might not get the satisfying sound of a frying pan to the head, Simon does take a wine bottle to Tyler's head. It's just not the same. Kinda disappointing actually, 2 out of 10. Simon drives Tyler and his car to an abandoned alley, and he makes his way back to Jessica, who welcomes him home with open arms. Simon isn't sure if he believes her, and he heads upstairs. The next day, Simon spends some time with Evan as they talk about how quickly Evan sold his house. They talk about Tyler's murder, but no one knows anything about the killer. In the end, Evan ends up thanking Simon for being such a good friend, and Simon heads to the basement to retrieve Jessica. She can't believe that he's offering to take her upstairs, but she follows him. He makes her stand in a specific spot, and he shows her the sold sign on Evan's property. He asks her how she feels about seeing this, and she tells him that they should do a small gesture to show how sad they are. Simon agrees to take him a bottle of wine, and he sits and drinks with him later. There's something hidden somewhere, isn't there? Haha! When Simon goes to leave, Evan notices Jessica's lipstick on his collar. Yeah, okay, that was smooth. In the morning, Simon wakes up next to Jessica, and they share a lovely bedroom conversation before Jessica offers to bake him a pie. He agrees to pick up the ingredients, but he doesn't know that Evan is pacing in his house, waiting. Evan gets a call from Oscar, and he finds out that Oscar told Tyler about Simon the day that Tyler died. Later, Evan packs up his car, but he's being drawn to Simon's house. In the basement, Simon and Jessica share the pie, but the alarm goes off. They turn on the TV to see that Evan is broken in and is searching for Jessica. When Evan can smell the pie, Simon knows that Jessica planned all of this, and he goes upstairs to fight Evan. Here's where Jessica's smarts show. She gave Simon rhubarb pie so that his fingers would leave marks on the keypad. Yes, Jessica! She rushes upstairs to help Evan fight Simon, and she almost kills him. It's Evan's words that keep her from delivering the final blow. 1 year later, Evan and Jessica say goodbye to each other in the street as Jessica tells him that what lies ahead is something she has to do on her own. Then she heads to the prison where she visits Simon, and she tells him that she asked for him to stay alive so that he knows what it's like to be a prisoner. Then she delivers him a present, a copy of her book about her story with him. After she leaves, he kisses her picture on the cover, and then the credits roll. This was great. I know there have been quite a few films with similar themes lately, but none of them pull it off like this one did. Give it a shot. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.